Hi, and welcome back. Or you've always been there. I'm the one who actually left. This is Charles Duhigg. It's good to see all of you again. And I'm so psyched because I get to have a conversation with an old classmate of mine and a great friend, Sal Khan, who many of you probably know. He is the founder of the Khan Academy, which I'm absolutely certain you have sent your children to at some point to learn from. And so, Sal, thank you so much for taking some time to visit with us today.
Great to be here, Charles, and good to see you. And I was saying in the backstage that Charles has definitely outbearded me, and it looks like he's been socially longer than I have.
So this is a good week to talk to you. You're one of the few people who I can say this of. It's a good week to talk to you because you basically created what we need this week 12 years ago, and I doubt it was in anticipation of this moment. But like, what is it like what's happening with Khan Academy? I mean, everyone's at home now.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, some of our team members started telling me, "Yeah, we're starting to see traffic spikes in South Korea and China." And we immediately realized, oh, they've closed schools nationwide. And China, for various reasons, and we could talk about that, has never been uh, a major area for us. We've thought about it, but South Korea we have. And then when the school closures happened, teachers started telling us how we were being used. And so then we started thinking about, well, gee, this might start to happen in the US. And we were thinking maybe in a few months it might happen. I'm the chair of a lab school that we have under our offices. And in that role, we were saying, maybe when are we going to think about closing schools? And then the next week, the conversation started accelerating. And so even last week, we're like, we should start preparing. We should start creating resources. And we kind of looked around figuratively and we said, there's nobody else who can really fill in this gap. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
lot of ed tech solutions out there, but the accessibility of it, how free it is, the fact that we cover everything from pre-K and Khan Academy kids all the way through the high school and the core of college, math. We now have English and language arts. We have sciences, humanities. So we said we've got to step up. And so we just immediately said, what resources do folks need above and beyond what we already offer? And we have to make sure we stay up. So we've thought about, we have to create schedules for parents and students across grade levels. We released those on Friday as soon as we saw the school closures were accelerating. We're doing daily live streams. We're putting out webinars for parents and teachers to sign up. And the initial data, it's still coming in. It's been a pretty interesting couple of days. Just yesterday, traffic is up 50% from the
Wow.
last Monday, and last I heard today is 10% up from yesterday.
Oh
So
my
it's starting to
gosh.
grow pretty fast day in, day out, and I think we're going to see because a lot of people are just getting their heads around the school closures. They're just getting the logistics in place. But as we build awareness that we're there, we're trying to step up in any way we can to support folks. We think it's going to be a major traffic spike, and we're doing full court press. Obviously, when we could talk more about what Khan Academy already has, but we're exploring other ways to support kids in more live ways, talking to people like Google and Zoom so that we can give real help,
Yeah.
maybe leverage volunteers. So we're open to ideas, but I think, it's interesting just in the context of this conference. I think it's moments like this where you realize gaps in kind of the social governmental infrastructure that tech-focused nonprofits are can start and really step up to play a major role.
That's absolutely, and what's really interesting to me is I know that because I've been following Khan Academy and a fan of the organization and you since we graduated from business school. I know that at first there was a lot of questions about why you guys were nonprofits. Like, why not? If you have this thing and it's going viral and people love it, why not make it a profit-seeking company? Like, how? What do you think? Like this week and what's going on right now, like, could you be as prepared as you are right now if you had built a for-profit company?
We don't know for sure what would have happened in that other path that could have been taken, 10 or 12 years ago. I had one answer for this question before the last couple of weeks, and I'll augment it with my new answer. My old answer, back in the day when Khan Academy was just ramping up, coming out of business school, when we used to hang out, I was, in the late 90s, I'd been involved in some entrepreneurial efforts, and those just depleted me so emotionally that I
Yeah.
actually went to business school as a bit of hiatus and just saying, I need to figure out my life, what I want to do with myself. And I had actually sworn off entrepreneurship. I had told myself I do not have the fortitude, the resilience to be an entrepreneur. And so in business school, I was kind of just soul searching, and I actually found out I really loved finance. My original background was in math and computer science, but I said, there's something about finance that's both analytical, but it's also about like humanity and history and all of these things and how society works. So I wanted to work at a hedge fund, but it's one of those things. I wanted to do something safer than entrepreneurship, so I ended up working at a one-person hedge fund or a two-person hedge fund, and that's when a year out of that, I got married. I was in Boston at the time, and my cousin Nadia needed help, and it started off as a family project, and it eventually grew into the website and resources. And the whole time that was happening, all of our friends, people from business school would say, okay, so what's your business model? How are you going to monetize this? And I'm like, that's not a business. I don't want to, this is just my hobby. I was protecting it emotionally because
Yeah.
And when you fast forward to 2008, 2009, I did have venture capitalists starting to approach me saying, hey, we've been using your material for our kids. We would love to, some of them were willing to write a check. And it was very tempting because this was my passion. I was having trouble focusing on my day job at the hedge fund. So I wanted to work on this. And so it was very tempting when a VC showed up. But, by meeting 2 or meeting 3, there's nothing wrong with VCs. Some of them are the ones funding Khan Academy. Many of our friends are VCs. They do many good things. For-profits do many good things. But that second conversation was always, how do we monetize? And at the same time, I was getting all of these letters from people all over the country, all over the world, saying how much it was helping them. And I just always wanted to be as transparent and open. I was like, no, this is for you. I'm not trying to become a billionaire off of this. This isn't some ulterior motive. This isn't going to be a bait and switch. And at around not around the same time, about 10 years before, I remember being incredibly inspired by, in the late 90s, everyone was already thinking about ed tech and online courses as a way maybe to make money. And a lot of universities were jumping on that bandwagon in 98, 99. And I remember in 2000, MIT launched MIT OpenCourseWare. And I had no idea at the time that I would somehow get into the same space. But I remember being so inspired when MIT said that just as a matter of principle, they were going to make this free for the world and they were going to spend their own resources to do it. And so when I was faced with the decision, I was like, if they're willing to do it, I should be willing to do it. And I also kind of went through a thought process of, okay, let's imagine a home run in I'm a guy in a walk-in closet. It's a delusional reality either way. A home run in the for-profit world is be the next Google, and that's great. And you can do a lot of great stuff. But a home run in the social sector is be the next Smithsonian, be a new type of education system, be the next Oxford. And those are the types of institutions that have held true to their mission and vision for multiple generations, for hundreds of years, and scale to billions. And, things like Google do incredible things, but I'm not sure if in 100 years, Google is going to be doing the same thing it's doing today, but I hope that Khan Academy can. So anyway, that's I was going to say.
No, I think that's really inspiring. And it's been really inspiring to watch you build this with this conviction and this humility and this dedication to building something that first and foremost focuses on helping people as opposed to figuring out how to monetize or how to pay back venture capitalists. It's really devoted to helping students and students who might not have gotten education otherwise. And I'll mention, if those of you who are watching, I can see all the comments. If you have questions for Sal, please feel free to type them into the comments, and I'll definitely ask them. Let me ask you this, Sal. So it's been 12 years, right, since you started Khan Academy, sort of full time, and made it your life's work. What do you wish? And you guys have had amazing growth and amazing prominence. What do you wish that someone had told you 12 years ago at a conference like this that it took you longer and more lumps to learn?
Well, the one thing I maybe would tell myself, and I keep reminding myself, is, and maybe I can say this in hindsight, because it was my stress and anxiety that got us to where we are now. But it's a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and I think any entrepreneurial effort, whether for-profit or nonprofit, you're so in it, and every day, every week, there's stuff that you stress about. I mean, in those early days when I had quit my job and I was living off of savings and hoping someone would support Khan Academy, and I wouldn't sleep a lot of nights. It put stress on my relationships. My whole family went. My first child was born at the time, and if I could talk to that Sal, who's literally like staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. saying like, what have I done to my family? I gave up a good hedge fund job. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. You have to remember back in 2009, when I quit my job, YouTube wasn't a mainstream thing. A tech nonprofit, like, what is that? People would think I lost. I mean, at dinner parties, I could tell they kind of lost respect for me on some level because he had a good career and he seemed to, and he's doing this thing with videos and exercises. He's got this website and he thinks it's like an institution, but it's just like a thing like Sal's kind of lost it. And, I remember people whispering as they walked away from me at dinner parties, like, thank God his wife is training to be a doctor. Someone's got my fragile male ego. So if I were to talk to that Sal, I was just like, do one foot in front of the other. I have young children, so but the Frozen series of animated Pixar things actually have a lot of wisdom. My wife has been quoting them a lot. Let it go and do the next right thing. It's Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 for you. So, but that's right. I mean, and that's actually the core of Buddhist philosophy and Vedic philosophy and all mysticism. Let it go. Don't get caught up in the material reality and all the distractions, and do the next right thing and do it for the right reasons. Don't be caught up with the outcome. And if you do that, you can go to sleep. You'll have the energy to do the right work. So when you see yourself cycling up in the middle of the night stressed, remind yourself that you're not going to be stressed about the same thing the next day. Just put one foot in front of the other and just do the next right thing, and make sure you're doing it because it's the right thing and not because you're obsessed with the outcome, either, a desire, coveting a positive outcome, or fear of a negative outcome.
So, and that's a really, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you've been doing this for a while, and I know that there were a lot of ups and downs as you started. I mean, burnout is a very real thing, not only for when you're first founding an organization, but when that organization is growing. How many employees does Khan Academy have at this point?
We have 215 employees.
Okay.
Right now.
So 215, I mean, that's a lot of people. That means that you got into this because you love education. And now I imagine you're spending a good portion of your time managing other people, which, while can be rewarding, is usually not quite as rewarding as the thing we got into a startup to do. How do you manage, the inevitable fatigue, mission fatigue, and burnout that comes in your life and in your employees' lives?
Well, I think that's one of the cool things about having a mission-focused organization, especially one that has a long view. Especially out here in Silicon Valley, but this is really the broader world, everyone is thinking super fast cycle, and it's so easy to get caught up in that. And it was actually a blessing in those early days that I had shunned traditional entrepreneurship. And what I told myself, because I saw in the late 90s, we thought we were going to become rich, and then we didn't become rich. And it's such a that if you and even if you're successful, that can be depleting in its own way. I was protecting Khan Academy in the early days, and I remember telling myself, I'm going to try to make this thing unkillable. Because in entrepreneurship, there can be a great idea, there can be great execution, but there's also just timing. Like, when is the world ready for this thing? And I knew that there was something there. I mean, when you get letters from people and it's helping their lives or their children or whoever, I was like, if it can work for that person, it can scale. Why can't it work for everybody? And so even in 2009, when I finally took the plunge to quit my job, my day job, I said, I'm going to make this, if I have to, if they'll take me back, I'll try. If it doesn't work after a year, I'll go back to my job, but I'm not going to shut it down. I'm just going to keep it going. And so try to do things in a way that it's hard for it to disappear. I think too many times in Silicon Valley, people go for the moon. If it happens, you're Google, but if it doesn't, and that's 90% of the time, you don't exist and no one knows anything about what you were trying to do over the, later. And what I've seen over this Khan Academy journey is almost every year, there's what feels like existential emergencies, or, oh, look at those people, they're doing this, maybe we have to do that as well. But if you shouldn't ignore the world, and you shouldn't be complacent, and you should always make sure you're on your A game. But you can't get too caught up with it and following what everyone else is doing either. And if you just put one foot into the other and you say, how do we make this thing last? Because we think it really has some social impact to it, that's going to work. And then for personal, I think it is important to really introspect on where you get energy from and what you're good at, and where others might have more strengths or might be able to bring more energy to the table. And so if any Khan Academy employees are listening or at the conference right now, I mean, they can judge how good of a manager I am, but I have a lot of help. I have an incredible president and COO, Ginny, who really helps make sure that the organization is well managed and run. And I've always had the help of a president and COO. Even in the early days when it looked like we were getting real funding, I called my college roommate, who's one of the most capable people I know, next to you, Charles. And I've learned to say one of the two most capable people I know. People can always assume that they're the other one. And I said, Shantanu, I need your help. This thing is going to scale. And what that's allowed me to do is always have some time. I continue to spend half of my day being able to be a little bit more focused on content, a little bit more focused on the education side of things. And then I do have to spend two-thirds of my day, thinking about fundraising, outreach,
Right.
Making sure that the team is well supported, things like
So
that.
let me ask about that, because two people, William Charnley and Monroe Mann, and again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your names, which I'm sure I am. They both asked questions about scaling, right? So Khan Academy had a really interesting path where very quickly after, relatively quickly, I'm sure it didn't feel that quick to you, after you made this your full-time work, you were embraced by a number of figures, Bill Gates among others. It gave it a lot of prominence, and there was this opportunity to scale very quickly, which you guys were able to execute on. But I imagine scaling was hard. Like, what do you find, particularly when you're dealing with folks who are mission driven? You don't want to get ahead of your skis financially because you don't have reliable sources of revenue from the product itself necessarily. What do you think that folks in the audience should be thinking about scaling and about growing when we don't know what the future is going to hold?
Yeah, it's hard, and we've gotten ahead of our skis multiple times. I think we might be ahead of our skis right now, especially with what's going on our traffic and all of that. Our costs are going up, so we love seeing the impact. But then we look at the dial on our costs, on our server costs. It's like, I got to raise some more money. Luckily, I think hopefully, and if anyone's listening, please support us. So scaling, I mean, there's a lot of different layers. I think we had a benefit from day one that our theory of action, our theory of change was inherently scalable. And I think a lot of the folks listening are thinking about tech for good. So those are inherently scalable. So out the gate, these types of solutions scale much better than traditional, which are important, but your traditional not-for-profit type of actions are much more, every dollar translates into one form of action or a malaria net. And those are important things, but they don't scale in quite the same way. I think that the difficult scaling that we've seen is as you scale an organ, if you want to do more, as you mentioned, you have to grow the number of people, the traffic, and you just hit these growth inflection points. When you're 5 people, everyone just does what makes sense. 10, 15 people, you got to be a little bit more aligned. Once you get to 30 people, you have to start thinking like a little bit like a manager, and you're really running an organization. And then at 50 people, 100 people, you start seeing some breaking points. Obviously, at the same time, you're trying to scale your philanthropy. The philanthropists, the larger the dollar amounts get, the more that they're asking for, details, making sure that you're a legitimate operation, things like that. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. So that's why it's been very valuable for me to get help from people like Ginny, like Shantanu in the early days, who have helped me think about and then they've been able to bring on a lot of other incredible people to help scale.
And let me ask, one of the things obviously is as you get bigger, there's financial considerations, right? You have to be able to manage a larger financial organization. I know from talking to other folks that there's also fundraising challenges, because as soon as you're prominent, you start turning to people, and there's some people who say, oh, well, Khan Academy doesn't need my dollars. You guys are so successful. Why should I contribute to you? As you've grown, how has sharing your story, particularly with potential funders, because I imagine most of your revenue at this point is from funders as opposed to any product that you're selling. How has changing that story shifted, and what have you found are the ways you need to change and the organization needs to change in order to remain viable?
Yeah, you're spot on. And right now, Khan Academy has roughly a $60 million a year budget, and every time I say that word, that number, my cortisol, like 60 million. Yeah, anyway, and you're right, it's predominantly philanthropic. We do have some earned revenue. People like the College Board and LSAC, they pay us to be the official practice for the LSAT, for the SAT, for several other exams. that generates about, give or take, 10 million a year. So, but still, the bulk of it is still has to be philanthropic, and it's different levels of philanthropy. But you're right. It's to some degree because we're known, we've been around, we're successful. Even though our impact today is 100-fold what it was when I was in a walk-in closet, or actually more than that. There's a risk of people saying, "Oh, you guys are established. Oh, I saw Bill Gates likes you. Surely, yeah." And it's never that easy. I mean, Bill Gates, Gates Foundation, they are a supporter, but they're funding about 3 or 4 million of that 60 million source of that
Right.
from. And these are all large numbers. 3 million is a lot for someone to be donating, but if 60, and I always point out, 60 sounds like a lot, but that's the budget of a large high school, and we've reached over 100 million folks last year, and I have a feeling this year there's 1 billion kids out of school, and 60 million might be a drop in the bucket for what we might have to do over the next couple of months. And so, yeah, it's a continual thing. You have to build your team to support the philanthropists who are thinking about 3 million a year grants, or a 4-year grant over 10 years. We've done no government grants yet, but we're thinking about maybe we have to go there if we have to keep scaling. But that level, then you have a whole other level of sophistication of your grant writing, of your financial and reporting, your efficacy studies that you have to put out. We've been building our efficacy and research team, our analytics team, partially for our own decision making and making sure we're making a good solution, but it's also for the stakeholders to say, okay, we see that you have reach, it's growing, but how do we know that you're working, and things like that, and we have to give them that data.
Well, and it's interesting because I feel like one of the things you're saying is something I hear from a lot of for-profit Valley companies, which is you need to build and hire for the company you hope to be in 2 years, rather than the company you are right now. That if you're skating to where the puck is going to be and you're thinking about government funding, I imagine that means you're hiring and bringing on different kinds of people. Let me ask. I think we have one more time for one more question, and so let me ask this because it's come up a couple of times in the comments. When you look at the landscape, obviously you guys are kind of the 800-pound gorilla in ed tech delivery of these courses and not-for-profit sort of ethos. One of the things that's come up is people asking, when do I know whether I should start a new organization, a new not-for-profit in an established space where I think I can add something, versus going to an established group and working for them? How much bifurcation and how much consolidation should we see in this space? I imagine you guys look at potential, companies that you might want to acquire or fold in on a regular basis. What do you think? If someone has a great idea, should they just start it, or should they go to a place and say, look, let me start this for you?
Everyone's got a different journey and a different way of answering that question. I would say, I laugh in Toronto when you call this an 800-pound gorilla, because obviously when you look at if you had enough qualifiers, nonprofit, then maybe but I look at the Pearsons and Scholastic of the world with billions of dollars they're using for some of this. But what I would say, and I actually think we're going to be doing, even this crisis we're going through around coronavirus, I'm reverting back to my entrepreneurial 10 years ago self, because there's problems like, how do kids get real-time help? How do they get this? And I'm working with partners to say, okay, can we put something together? And I think if you can find yourself in a situation where you're like, hey, there's a solution that I can put together on my own or with some help from a few folks that can have immediate impact, immediate use for people, do it. And if you can have a day job and keep some income, do it simultaneously maybe. And then let that thing see that it has real impact. And then if it really does, then you can decide, hey, do I pitch it to some other or group that, hey, I'm willing to donate it? And that actually happened with Khan Academy Kids, where a formerly for-profit Duck Duck Moose, they're the best, I would say, early learning app development team.
Apps are fantastic, amazing.
They donated their company to Khan Academy. And it was one of these, I have this whole theory that benevolent aliens are helping Khan Academy so that we can help prepare humans for first contact. So that was one of those benevolent alien actions where a for-profit venture-backed company decided to donate their company to us, even though they were getting acquisition offers and they could have gotten a lot richer. And the VCs agreed. So as I said, VCs can be are usually good people. They wanted to do what's right by the world. But yeah, but if you're onto something and you're showing impact and it can scale, try to fundraise around it. We've had a couple of team members at Khan Academy. Grant Sanderson, who does 3 Blue 1 Brown. He has a YouTube channel. He used to be one of our video content creators. for Khan Academy, but he was making this other type of videos, which is related, but it was kind of a more conceptual around some higher level math concepts, but that he was doing it on the side a little bit and a little bit as part of his Khan Academy work. But at some point, he's like, this is a real thing. And we encouraged him, like, yeah, go do this. And he actually ended up buying the Khan Academy content he created from us so that he could create his own thing. We have another person who used to be a Khan Academy team member, Ben Eder, who loves teaching people how to build computers. And he kind of started his own YouTube channel simultaneously with us. So that's my other advice. And, the last thing I would say is, one of the things that got us here, I mean, you mentioned in the early days where people were noticing us, whether it was Bill Gates or Google.org, and, you really can't plan for that type of thing. But don't hesitate to think big. There's definitely a world back in 2010 where I could have just said, hey, I could be a cool YouTube channel and make it a nice lifestyle for myself and make some money. And frankly, that would have been more maybe like fun on a day-to-day basis for me, because I could have just done the content all the time. But don't hesitate to think what is a responsibility you have to the world. So anytime I have to do things that I might not fully enjoy, like I have to attend an audit meeting or something, I think about, no, this is in service to a very, very big thing for the world. And that's what I'm reminding myself right now when we're in this situation, is like, what are the things that people need? And instead of assuming that something is hard, just say like, okay, well, how could it happen? Let's try to bring it might sound hard to give a billion people live tutoring somehow, but maybe there's another billion willing to volunteer. So maybe we can match them together. So we'll figure it out.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And this is not the last time I or many people listening to this will hear your voice this week, because I'm sure we're going to be using Khan Academy to keep our kids from driving us crazy and actually learn something. So thanks for taking the time, and have a great quarantine at home.
You too, Charles. And we're doing live streams every day, 9 a.m. You could look it up on our social media.
Fantastic. My kids are going to be there.
All right.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.